Leadership molds economies, and economies define societies. From Washington's corridors of power to London's teeming streets, from Canada's political upheaval to the pulse of global finance, today we trace how leadership decisions ripple across economies and societies. Let's journey through three nations now: America, Canada, and the United Kingdom. United States, leadership in turmoil. Tariff spending and gridlock. A recent survey of 159 economists shows 88% believe President Trump's tariffs slow growth and boost inflation. Immigration restrictions and interference with the Federal Reserve raise further alarms. State intervention in industry. The U.S. government's 10% stake in Intel and deals with NVIDIA and AMD spark debate on politicizing innovation and hampering market dynamics. Fed independence at risk. Trump's attempt to oust a Fed governor unsettled markets, weakening confidence in U.S. assets. Economic warning signs. Job growth slows drastically. Only jobs monthly added since June vs 168,000 in 2024. GDP growth under 1.3% amid rising inflation and manufacturing job losses, minus 37,000 jobs. Federal layoffs and workforce fear. Mass layoffs in federal agencies, including education and consumer protection, cause severe psychological trauma among remaining staff. Leadership actions, policies like tariffs, spending shifts, and institutional meddling have triggered slowed growth, rising prices, and frayed public trust. The American economy stands at a crossroads. Britain pressures and reform. Labor's economic strategy. Chancellor Rachel Reeves seeks to unlock private sector investment, introducing a $3 billion national wealth fund to decarbonize industry. Growth prospects, mixed signals. UK business activity hits a 12-month high in August, yet GDP growth slowed from 0.7% to 0.3%, with public debt near 96% of GDP. Forecasts range. IMF sees growth at 1.2% in 2025, rising to 1.4% in 2026. Resolution Foundation warns unemployment may hit 5% amid soaring wages, yet falling job openings. Fiscal constraints and vision debate. IMF stresses tight fiscal rules. Reeves seeks a bold, growth-oriented vision like abundance, emphasizing deregulation and infrastructure, but lacks full support from PM Starmer. Infrastructure and industrial push. Labor plans a $725 billion infrastructure strategy over 10 years, and a new industrial strategy backed by £86 billion for R&D and innovation. Heathrow's proposed third runway and expansion, £49 billion, could add 0.43% to GDP, but sparks environmental controversy. Global diplomacy and innovation. Starmer secured a UK-EU deal potentially worth £9 billion by 2040, boosting security, trade, and Erasmus participation. In fintech, UK lags on stablecoin regulation, risking loss of innovation leadership. Britain today is balancing ambition and constraint. Infrastructure spending, industrial renewals, and global outreach aim to revive growth, but fiscal limits, economic skepticism, and policy cohesion may determine Labour's economic legacy. Canada, crisis and transition. Political upheaval and trade tensions. Justin Trudeau's resignation amid internal collapse in late 2024 prompted a leadership race. Political instability sent the Canadian dollar to historic lows and spooked business investment. Trump's tariffs, 25-50%, on Canadian goods spurred retaliatory tariffs by Canada, escalating a trade war. Economic fallout and policy pivot. Despite 2.6% annualized Q4 2024 GDP growth, vulnerability remains. Higher inflation, export decline, and investment dips forecast weaker growth in 2025. Inflation hit around 4.6%. Unemployment rose to 6.3%, with 33,000 jobs lost in Q1 2025. Leadership of Mark Carney. Carney immediately removed the consumer carbon tax to ease cost of living pressures and introduced tax cuts, bottom rate to 14%, and GST relief for first-time homebuyers. His economic plan emphasizes deregulation, infrastructure, trade diversification, and fiscal prudence. Socioeconomic pressures. Canadian households cite high food costs and housing as major stressors. 51% expect a worsening economy. Forecasts vary. IMF predicts 2.4% growth. OECD suggests a weaker 1% due to trade tensions. Resilience and reform. Canada is pivoting trade toward EU and Indo-Pacific markets, using infrastructure and diversification as buffers. Canada stands at a pivotal moment. Political turnover and tariffs shook the economy, but under Carney, strategic reforms, fiscal, regulatory, and diplomatic, seek to rebuild resilience. The coming months will tell if this reset succeeds. London, a global epicenter. London's global repositioning. Barclays CEO emphasizes the need for an outward-looking economic ethos, post-Brexit, to sustain London as a financial hub. Wealth flight concerns. Increasing taxes and regulatory burdens are triggering a brain drain. 53% of ultra-wealthy likely to leave, with 16,500 millionaires expected to exit in 2025. Fintech and listings. Coutts highlights continued potential for UK listings, despite portfolio shifts. London's FTSE 100 has outperformed the S&P 500 this year. Labor participation and inflation. Bank of England warns of weak labor force participation, 21% inactivity, and inflation at 3.8%, driven by post-pandemic drops in working-age engagement. Strategically positioned hub. Strategic infrastructure projects, e.g. Heathrow expansion, and AI leadership signify London's ambition to retain competitiveness if policy aligns. London remains a financial heartbeat, but it's anxious. Rising taxes, regulatory uncertainty, and global competition threaten its allure. The city's future hinges on whether leadership protects its global edge through innovation and openness. Leadership is the catalyst that shapes economies, builds trust, and forms societies. In the US, populist policy prompts uncertainty. Britain is rebuilding through infrastructure and reform. Canada navigates change under new leadership, and London fights to stay on top in a shifting world. Ultimately, leadership determines direction and the outcomes we live. So ask yourself, what kind of leadership shapes the economies and futures we want?